Honda's announcement that it will leave Formula 1 for the 4th time at the end of 2021 is bound to have a major impact. It costs Red Bull its works team status and raises questions about Max Verstappen's future, even if he is under contract. But just like Honda leaving F1 is nothing new, after all it quit F1 for the first time in the 1960s, we're also used to its decisions having a major impact on F1 history. In this video, rather than purely looking at each time Honda has entered F1 and subsequently left again, we're looking at the things they did that ended up having the biggest effect on F1. Make sure you let us know what you think Honda's biggest F1 decisions have been, and what you make of it deciding to walk away again at the end of 2021. And if you're not already a subscriber to our channel, hit that button if you'd like to show your support and to make sure you never miss another video from the race. Jordan secured a works engine supply with Honda alongside BAR for 2001 and 2002, and it beat the preferred partner in the championship in both of those seasons. But maybe that success backfired. As Jordan and Honda debated if their 5-year contract was for 2 years with an option of another 3, or 3 years plus 2, Honda decided to pay a severance to end the deal after 2002. Honda paid Jordan $22 million in compensation on the condition that the money had to be put towards future engine deals. Jordan was devastated, believing Honda had been encouraged by BAR to focus on one team. Jordan never recovered, limping on for 3 more years before becoming Midland. Another team that began a sharp downward spiral when it lost Honda engines was Lotus, which makes you wonder what it was about yellow teams that Honda found so off-putting. Honda dropped Lotus after a disappointing 1988 season when its engines had cleaned up in the back of the legendary McLaren MP44. Meanwhile, Lotus struggled to a distant 4th in the championship, only getting ahead of Arrows and March with a 3rd place for a demotivated Nelson Piquet in the Adelaide finale. Honda decided to give McLaren exclusive use of its new V10 engine following the ban on turbos for 1989, while Lotus never scored another podium finish as it drifted towards oblivion by the end of 1994. Even when Honda left F1 at the end of 1992, it decided to keep its hand in with Mugen, which supplied footwork, the final disastrous year of Lotus, then Ligier/Prost, and finally Jordan. While Honda describes its involvement in this era as low-key, it offered more support than it liked to let on, and it won 4 races, including the final win for Ligier in 1996 and the first for Jordan in 1998. What makes this spell even more remarkable is that Heinz-Harald Frentzen was then a title contender in 1999 with Mugen Honda Power. Honda might have tried to keep this program low-key, but by the end of the 90s its performances were anything but. First time around, the McLaren-Honda partnership won 4 championships in a row, and at times looked unstoppable. But the decision to switch to a V12 engine for 1991 was ultimately misguided, and although Ayrton Senna won that year's championship, it was clear Williams-Renault was in the ascendancy. Honda pulled out at the end of 1992, and with it went a large part of Senna's loyalty to McLaren. Senna had resisted previous offers from Williams out of respect to Honda, but once he knew the manufacturer was leaving, he did all he could to get out. He offered to drive for Williams for nothing in 1993, but was beaten to the punch by Alain Prost, and after a year of getting paid $1 million per race by McLaren, he was able to force his way into Williams at the expense of Prost for 1994. Williams dominated the 1987 F1 season, winning 9 races and sweeping both championships, but the following year they were nowhere. The reason? Because Honda took its engines to McLaren. The damage had been done a year earlier when Williams let Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell battle each other for the championship, and Alain Prost snuck in to take the 1986 title. Honda felt Piquet should have been given number 1 treatment at Williams, and it even put forward Satoru Nakajima to replace Mansell for 1987. Piquet says he told Williams it could lose Honda if he left, and when the team didn't flinch, he signed for Lotus for 1988. Shortly after that, Honda announced it was following Ayrton Senna from Lotus to McLaren, but Piquet's presence at Lotus meant it was Williams getting paid off and hunting for a new engine. This decision from Honda didn't only affect Williams and F1 for 1988. Once Frank Williams knew his deal might be in trouble, he sounded out Renault, which had left F1 after 1986 but had been hard at work on a V10 engine for the new rules coming in for 1989. After one painful year with Judd engines and a car hobbled by a troublesome early version of active suspension, Williams-Renault would become the dominant partnership of the 90s, and it was a relationship that might never have come together if it wasn't for Honda's frustration with Williams in the first place. McLaren Honda 2.0 was supposed to be a return to the glory years, but the second coming of this once glorious partnership had nothing in common with the first, all the way through to Ron Dennis apparently rejecting suggestions from inside McLaren to go back to a red and white livery for 2015. In keeping with the point of this video, this entry isn't just an excuse to say wasn't McLaren Honda terrible second time around. The decision here that had a huge impact on F1 was Honda being convinced to come back in the first place. Had Dennis not been able to persuade Honda to do a works engine deal, there's every chance McLaren would have continued to run the dominant Mercedes engine throughout the hybrid era. Instead, it plummeted down the order with Honda, had its chassis weaknesses exposed when it switched to Renault, and in 2021 it's going back to Mercedes. How different could McLaren's results since 2015 have looked if it had just put up with being a Mercedes customer all along? If you were expecting this to be number one, and to be honest, when we started work on this, we were too, don't be angry. This is one of the most famous stories in F1 history. After two dreadful Earth car years, Honda suddenly quit F1 at the end of 2008 in response to the global financial crisis. That meant the car it had spent hundreds of millions developing for the new rules in 2009 was set to go unraced. Step forward a Ross Brawn and Nick Fryer-led rescue package, some financial help from Honda to get through the season, a hasty rebrand to Brawn GP, and crucially a Mercedes engine deal. The result was a dominant start to the season and both world championships. At the end of the year, Mercedes smelt a deal and bought the team, and more than a decade later, what was once Honda is now the most dominant team in F1 history. So how on earth can that not be number one on this list? The Honda Brawn Mercedes story wouldn't have happened without a decision Honda took a decade before that, which also impacted its great rival Toyota. As we've explained in great detail in its own video elsewhere on this channel, Honda was considering creating its own team from scratch for 2000. But the cost of the project caused a split at board level, and in the end it returned to F1 in a works engine capacity with BAR. Honda eventually took the team over, leading to the events of 2008, 9 and 10. The reason this affected Toyota was because it opened up the final place on the grid. Had Honda taken the slot that was reserved for it, Toyota would have had to buy one of F1's independent teams to make its debut in 2002. How different do you think F1 would have looked in the 21st century if Honda had taken a different route? Who would Toyota have bought? Would Honda's startup works team still have become Brawn in 2009 and still been bought by Mercedes? And what would have happened to BAR? Let us know your answers to those questions in the comments, and tell us what you think were the biggest decisions in Honda's F1 history. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so we can see you again next time.